Make yourself ready to start upon this wonderful adventure of relaxation, self-discovery, and self-improvement. The possibilities are unlimited.
Processing.
Please hold.
All right, let us begin.
Well, there can't be a practical reason for believing what isn't true. That's quite, at least I rule it out as impossible. Impossible. It's impossible. It's impossible. I rule it out as impossible. Either the thing is true or it isn't. If it is true, you should believe it, and if it isn't, you shouldn't. If you can't find out whether it's true or whether it isn't, you should suspend judgment. It seems to me a fundamental dishonesty and a fundamental treachery to intellectual integrity to hold a belief because you think it's useful and not because you think it's true. Well, there can't be a practical reason for believing what isn't true. I rule it out as impossible. It's impossible.
But are we, perhaps the ordinary person, perhaps isn't strong enough to find this own personal ethic? You have to have something imposed upon them. You have to have something imposed upon them from outside. You have to have something imposed upon them. You have to have something imposed upon them from outside.
Oh, I don't think that's true. Oh, I don't think that's true. Oh, I don't think that's true. And what is imposed on you from outside is of no value, whatever. Doesn't count. Doesn't count. Doesn't count. Doesn't count. Well, there can't be a practical reason for believing what isn't true. That's quite, at least I rule it out as impossible.
This is processing.
So you're a philosopher?
Yes. I'm Luvell Anderson from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign.
You know something? What? I think that it might be interesting to make a really serious study of propaganda.
Election season is back upon us. You generally steer clear of political debates online because you value your sanity. But you happen to come across a post that gets to you. You snap back at this misinformed cretin with a well-crafted response any sensible person should take seriously. Your enemy does not relent. They dig in their heels and return fire with more propaganda. After a few failed attempts at holding a reasonable conversation, you think better of it and return to your no internet fighting policy. But the misinformation your enemy spews concerns you. You've seen family members fall prey to it. Little did you know, your enemy was a bot.
Yeah, it's gonna be well wicked.
An automated social media account that can reproduce messages convincingly humanly. These bots are sometimes deployed to manipulate public opinion. The presence of bots on social media platforms is formidable. Social media companies have been trying to figure out how to handle the situation. But how can programmers hope to capture propagandistic online content? According to people who study generative AI modeling, successful tools for identifying large language model generated texts don't exist. To add to the difficulty, there's no clear consensus on how to identify propaganda either. You may recall a lot of talk about bots and fake accounts flooding social media sites during the 2016 election cycle. Researchers believe they impacted our elections by flooding the social space with misinformation and disinformation. You may regard this content as propaganda, but not all misinformation should be described as such. As a philosopher, I can't really help with the tools needed to help identify LLM-generated text. What I can do is help delineate some of the ways people use the term propaganda and the consequences of those definitions. One way we might define propaganda is as biased speech. Biased speech presents itself as neutral, but aims to serve a private set of interests. Propaganda, then, is speech that purports to be neutral, but really serves the speaker's private interest. Propaganda is contrasted with information, unbiased content that furnishes facts, or more specifically, unbiased speech in the service of truth and fact. Lingering in the air is the sense that information is objective. Unlike propaganda, information adheres to the conditions of truth and falsity, not the whims of personal wants and desires. According to one version of the claim we are considering, the propagandist thinks about their private interests and desires first and foremost. Though something feels right about this, I ultimately think defining propaganda as biased speech does not work. For one thing, it rules out the possibility that someone could unknowingly distribute propaganda. For example, someone could unwittingly share a meme on Facebook, which the Internet Research Agency introduced online to destabilize the social structure of the target country. Further, it is not too much of a stretch to think most speech is biased when trying to make a point in the public sphere. Hardly anyone speaks from a place of so-called disinterestedness. Most of us have an agenda, even if it is not nefarious, even if we sometimes fail to realize it. If true, this would make most, if not all speech, propaganda. And if everything is propaganda, then nothing is. Perhaps a better approach is to consider propaganda speech that comes from an unreliable source. Non-propaganda, then, is information that comes from a reliable source. This might be better, but it still has its problems. To name just one, reliable sources can give us propaganda, while unreliable sources can present genuine information. Rather than focusing on propaganda's linguistic properties, highlighting its characteristic effects might be more fruitful. At its heart, propaganda is a kind of manipulative expression that impacts its victims' imaginative capacity by ushering them into discursive worlds crucially detached from the actual world. Manipulation, to borrow from Susser, Russell, and Nissenbaum, is an attempt to change the way someone would behave absent the manipulator's interventions. According to them, manipulation is a kind of influence that aims to displace the target as the decider, to subvert their capacity for self-government, to undermine or disrupt the ways of choosing that they themselves would critically endorse, if they considered the matter in a way that is lucid and free of error. The imagination plays a vital role in our moral and political judgments. It often provides an interpretive lens for understanding various possible scenarios. I like to think of the imagination as a capacity that helps us envision possibilities. Many factors may affect the way this capacity functions. manipulative speech, like propaganda, distorts that capacity. Long story short, consuming online propaganda regularly can cause a person to generate representations untethered from the actual world. And when people use these distorted representations in their moral and political reasoning, it constrains the possibilities they can imagine. Sometimes, this constrained imaginative capacity can lead to harmful outcomes, like when people who believed the 2020 election had been stolen attacked the Capitol building. Addressing online propaganda is very important because of the possibility of harmful outcomes. Directing our focus to the manipulative effects of online content encourages us to identify items that fit a pattern of imaginative manipulation. I believe this is a better way of identifying and addressing the danger of online propaganda.
Well, if I don't learn about propaganda, it won't be because there's no way to study it.
That's right, Chuck.
Now, you ask, how come people are deluded? You know, you cannot be a good propagandist unless it's in your bones. I mean, it's extremely hard to lie. I think we all know that from personal experience. You know, it's hard to lie to people. Every one of us lies to people all the time, unless we're some kind of crazy angels. But the way we do it, I'm sure you know this, is you first convince yourself that what you're saying is true, you know.
Count now to 10, along with me, repeating the thought, I'm going to sleep. I'm going to sleep, 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 sleep. We're going to sleep, 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 sleep.
Focusing attention on a moving object brings about concentration that may lead into a state of hypnosis.
You know, you cannot be a good propagandist unless it's in your bones.
The essence of bullshit is that the person who produces doesn't really care whether what he's saying is true or false. He's not engaged in the enterprise of conveying information or in deceiving people. He's engaged in the enterprise of manipulating opinions, manipulating attitudes and feelings, and he will say whatever he thinks will be effective in that respect, regardless of whether it's true or false.
You know, you cannot be a good propagandist unless it's in your bones.
The whole question of whether something is true or false is a matter of total indifference to him. Bullshit is a more insidious threat to our culture, to our civilization, than lying is, because bullshit encourages and normalizes, if that's a word, makes people accept as normal indifference to the truth. It undermines our general feeling that truth is important and that it warrants respect and concern. We also live in a society in which there's an enormous amount of talk. People are paid to talk. So they go on talking, and they go on talking beyond the point at which they know what they're talking about. And the result of that is inevitably and inescapably that they begin producing bullshit.
Count now to 10.
You know, you cannot be a good propagandist unless it's in your bones.
We suppose, or at least many of us do, that it's the duty of a citizen, of a good citizen, to have opinions about everything. You can't have an opinion about everything that's well informed. You can't have an opinion about everything that's based on a careful analysis of the relevant data. The result is, if you feel you have to have an opinion about everything, that you're going to have lots of opinions that are nothing more than bullshit.
Count now to 10, along with me, repeating the thought, I'm going to sleep. I'm going to sleep. I'm going to sleep. I'm going to sleep.